Hello again. Welcome to Storytime with Miss Peggy and the Silver Chair, chapters 11 and 12. Woo, we have really had some adventures, haven't we? And I think it might be a good idea if we just revisited those four signs that Jill and Eustace have been supposed to follow as they have left Narnia and have gone north. Have they been following the signs, or have they, we've seen some instances where they just plumb forgot them altogether, didn't they? Let's just review what those four signs were and see how the children are doing in your minds. Do you think they've done a good job of following them, or let's see. All right, the first sign that Aslan gave to Jill was, "These are the signs by which I will guide you in your quest. First, as soon as the boy Eustace sets foot in Narnia, he will meet an old and dear friend. He must greet that friend at once. If he does, you will both have good help." How did he do on that one? So well. Second, you must journey out of Narnia to the north until you come to the ruined city of the ancient giants. They've done that, haven't they? Yes, they have. Third, you shall find a writing on a stone in that ruined city, and you must do what that writing tells you. Well, they did find some writing on a stone, didn't they? And it said, "Under me." And they are under the ruined city now, aren't they? They got there kind of accidentally, escaping from the hunting party that was chasing after them, hoping to turn the two children into man pies for their autumn feast. But they did get under the ruined city. And then fourth, it says, "You will know the lost prince, if you find him, by this, that he will be the first person you have met in your travels who will ask you to do something in my name, in the name of Aslan." Well, we haven't had that one yet. I wonder if they'll find it and whether they will see it and recognize it and do it. Well, let's find out. Chapter 11, In the Dark Castle. And they were, as the chapter closed last time, they were eating dinner with a mysterious person that they met underground who seemed to be a royalty and said he was engaged to marry the lady with the green dress. We're not sure about her, and we're not sure about him either, but he has invited them to dinner, and that's where we left them. When the meal, which was pigeon pie, cold ham, salad, and cakes, had been brought, all of them drew their chairs up to the table and began to eat, and the night continued. You remember that this young man that they have met down under the ground there turns out to have been the Black Knight who was riding with the lady with the green dress. The green kirtle, it's called in here. "You must understand, friends," he began, "that I know nothing of who I was and whence I came into this dark world. I remember no time when I was not dwelling, as now, in the court of this all but heavenly queen. But my thought is that she saved me from some evil enchantment and brought me here by her exceeding kindness. Honest Frogfoot, your cup is empty. Suffer me to refill it. And this seems to me the likelier because even now I am bound by a spell from which my lady alone can free me. Every night there comes an hour when my mind is horribly changed. And after my mind, my body. For first I become furious and wild and would rush upon my dearest friends to kill them if I were not tied up. And soon after that, I turn into the likeness of a great serpent, hungry, fierce, and deadly. Please, Eustace, be pleased to take another breast of pigeon, I entreat you. So they tell me, and they certainly speak the truth, for my lady says the same. But I myself know nothing of it, for when my hour is past, I awake, forgetful of that vile fit, and my proper shape and mind. I am back in my proper shape and sound mind, except that I am somewhat weary. Oh, little lady, please eat one of these honey cakes, which are brought for me from some barbarous land in the far south of the world. Kellerman, maybe. Now the Queen's Majesty knows by her magic that I shall be freed from this enchantment when she has made me the king of a land in the overworld and set its crown upon my head. The land is already chosen, and the very place of our breaking out into it has been chosen as well. Her Earthmen have worked day and night digging a tunnel underneath it, and have now gone so far and so high that their tunnel is not but 20 feet beneath the very grass that the updwellers of that country are walking on. It will be very soon now that those uplanders' fate will come upon them. She herself is at the diggings tonight, and I expect a message to go to her. Then the thin roof of earth, which still keeps me from my kingdom, will be broken through, and with her to guide me, and 1,000 earthmen at my back, I shall ride forth with my sword and my armor. I shall fall upon our enemies, slay their chief men, throw down their strong places, and doubtless be their crowned king within 24 hours. That's a bit of rough luck on them, isn't it? Said Scrub. You are a land of wondrous quick-working wit, exclaimed the knight, for, on my honor, I had never thought of it that way before. I see your meaning. And he looked slightly, very slightly, troubled for a moment or two, but his face soon cleared, and he broke out with another of his loud laughs. But fie on being grave! Is it not the most comical and ridiculous thing in the world to think of them all going and coming about their business and never dreaming that under their peaceful fields and floors, only 20 feet down, there is a great army ready to break out upon them like a fountain? And they never suspected. Why, they themselves, when once their defeat is over, can hardly choose to laugh at the thought. Well, I don't think it's funny at all, said Jill. I think you'll be a wicked tyrant. What? Said the knight, still laughing and patting her head in a very infuriating fashion. Is our little maid a deep politician? But never fear, sweetheart. In ruling that land, I will do everything that my great lady says, and she will be my queen by then. Her word shall be my law, even as my word will be law to the people we have conquered. Where I come from, said Jill, who was disliking him more every minute, we don't think much of men who are bossed about by their wives. Oh, you'll think otherwise when you have a man of your own, I warrant you, said the knight, apparently thinking this was very funny. But with my lady, it's another matter. I am well content to live by her word. She has already saved me from 1,000 dangers. No mother has taken pains more tenderly for her child than she has for me. Why, look you, amid all her cares and business, she goes out with me to the overworld many a time to accustom my eyes to the sunlight. And then I must go fully armed with my visor down so that no man can see my face, and of course I speak to no one, for she has found out by her magic arts that this would hinder my deliverance from the enchantment I lie under. Isn't this lady worthy of a man's whole worship? Oh, she sounds like a very nice lady indeed, said Puddleglum, in a voice which meant exactly the opposite. They were thoroughly tired of the knight's talk before they had finished supper. Puddleglum was thinking, I wonder what game that witch is really playing with this young fool. Scrub was thinking, he's a big baby really, tied to that woman's apron strings. And Jill was thinking, he is the silliest, most conceited, selfish pig I have met for a long time. But when the meal was over, the king's mood had changed, and there was no more laughter about him. Friends, he said, my hour is very near. I am ashamed that you should see me, yet I dread to be left alone. They will come in presently and bind me hand and foot to yonder chair. And, alas, so it must be, for in my fury, they tell me, I would destroy everything that I can reach. I say, said Scrub, I'm awfully sorry about your enchantment, of course, but what will those fellows do to us when they came in to tie you up? They talked of putting us in prison, and we don't like all those dark places very much. We'd rather stay here with you until you're better, if we may. Well, that is very kind of you, said the knight. By custom, none but the queen remain here with me in my evil hour. Such is her tender care for my honor that she would not willingly suffer any ears but her own to hear the words I utter in that frenzy. But I could not easily persuade my attendant gnomes that you should be left with me. And I think I hear their soft feet even now on the stairs. Just go through yonder door. It leads to my apartment. And there you can either wait for my coming when they have unbound me, or if you will, you can return and sit with me in my ravings. They followed his direction and passed out of the room by a door which they had not seen opened. But it brought them, they were pleased to see, not into darkness, but into a lighted corridor. They tried various doors and found, what they very badly needed, water for washing and even a mirror. He never offered us a wash before supper, said Jill, drying her face. What a selfish, self-centered pig he is. Are we going back to watch the enchantment, or shall we stay here? Said Scrub. Stay here, I vote, said Jill. I'd rather not see it. But she did feel a little inquisitive all the same. No, go back, said Puddleglum. We may pick up some information, and we need all the help we can get. I am sure that the queen is a witch and an enemy. And as those earthmen would knock us on the head as soon as look at us, there's a strange smell of danger and lies and magic and treason about this land, such as I have never smelled before. We need to keep our ears and our eyes open. So they went back down the corridor and gently pushed the door open. It's all right, said Scrub, meaning that there were no earthmen there. Then they all came into the room where they had eaten dinner. The main door was now shut, concealing the curtain behind which they had first entered. The knight was seated in a strange and curious silver chair, to which he was bound by his ankles, his knees, his elbows, his wrists, and his waist. There was sweat on his face, and his forehead, and his face was filled with anguish. Come in, friends, he said, quickly glancing up. The fit is not quite yet upon me. Make no noise, for I told that prying chamberlain that you were in bed. Now, I can feel it coming. Quick, listen while I am master of myself. When the fit is upon me, it may well be that I shall implore you with entreaties and threatenings to loosen my bonds. They say I do. I shall call upon you by all that it is most dear and most dreadful, but do not listen to me. Harden your hearts and stop your ears, for while I am bound, you are safe. But if once I were up and out of this chair, then first would come my fury, and after that, the shuddering, he said, the change into a loathsome serpent. Well, there's no fear of our loosing you, said Puddleglum. We don't want to meet wild men or serpents either. I should think not, said Scrub and Jill together. All the same, said Puddleglum in a whisper, don't let's be too sure. Let's be on our guard. We've muffed everything else, you know. He'll be cunning. I shouldn't wonder once he gets started. Can we trust one another? Do we all promise that whatever he says, we won't touch those ropes? Whatever he says, mind you? Oh, rather, said Scrub. There's nothing in the world he can say or do that'll make me change my mind, said Jill. Hush, something's happening, whispered Puddleglum. The knight was moaning. His face was as pale as putty, and he writhed in his bonds. And whether she was just sorry for him or for some other reason, Jill thought he looked a lot nicer sort of man than he had looked before. Ah, he groaned, enchantments, enchantments, the heavy, tangled, cold, clammy web of evil magic. I've been buried alive here, dragged down under the earth, down into this sooty blackness. How many years is it? Have I lived 10 years or 1,000 years in this pit? With maggot men all around me. Oh, have mercy. Let me out. Let me go back. Let me feel the wind of the sky. There used to be a little pool, and when you looked down into it, you could see all the trees upside down in the water, all green, and below them, deep, very deep, the blue sky. He had been speaking in a low voice, but now he looked up, fixed his eyes upon them, and said, loud and clear, "Quick! I am sane now. Every night I am sane. If only I could get out of this enchanted chair, it would last. I should be a man again, but every night they bind me, and so every night my chance is gone. But you are not enemies. I am not your prisoner. Quick, cut these ropes." "Stand fast, steady," said Puddleglum to the children. "I beseech you to hear me," said the knight, forcing himself to speak calmly. "Have they told you that if I'm released from this chair I shall kill you and become a serpent? I see by your faces that they have. It is a lie. It is at this hour that I am in my right mind. It's the rest of the day that I am enchanted. You are not earthmen or witches. Why should you be on their side? Of your courtesy, please cut my bonds." "Steady, steady, steady," said the three travelers to one another. "Oh, you have hearts of stone," said the knight. "Believe me, you're looking on a wretch who has suffered almost more than any mortal can bear. What wrong have I ever done you, that you should side with my enemy to keep me in such misery? And the minutes are sleeping past. Now you can save me. When this hour has passed, I shall be witless again, the toy and the lapdog, and pawn and tool of the most devilish sorceress that ever planned the woe of men. And this night of all nights, when she is away, you take from me a chance that will never come again." "This is dreadful. I do wish we had stayed away until it's over," said Jill. "Steady," said Puddleglum. The prisoner's voice was now rising into a shriek. "Let me go, I say! Give me my sword, my sword! Once I am free, I shall take such vengeance on the earthmen that the underworld will talk about it for 1,000 years." "Now the frenzy is beginning," said Scrub. "I hope those knots on the ropes will hold all right." "Yes," said Puddleglum. "He'd have twice his natural strength if he got free now, and I am not clever with my sword. He'd get us both, I shouldn't wonder, and then Pole on her own would be left to tackle the snake." The prisoner was now so straining at his bonds that the ropes were cutting into his wrists and ankles. "Beware," he said, "beware. One night I did break them, but the witch was there that time. You will not have her to help you tonight. Free me, please. I am your friend. I am. Otherwise, I'm your mortal enemy." "Ooh, he's cunning, isn't he?" said Puddleglum. "Once for all," said the prisoner, "I plead with you to let me get free. By all the fears and loves, by the bright skies of the overland, by the great lion, by Aslan himself, I beg you." "Ah!" said the three travelers, as though they had been hurt. "It's the sign," said Puddleglum. "It was the words of the sign," said Scrub. "What are we to do?" said Jill. It was a dreadful question. What had been the use of promising one another that they would not on any account set the knight free, if they were now to do it the first time he happened to call out the one name they really cared about? On the other hand, what had been the use of learning the signs if they weren't going to obey them? Yet, could Aslan really mean them to untie someone, even a lunatic who asked in his name? Could it be a mere accident? Or what if the queen of the underworld knew all about the signs and had made the king, the knight, learn this name simply in order to entrap them? They'd muffed 3 of the signs already. They did not dare muff the 4th. "Oh, if only we knew," said Jill. "I think we do know," said Puddleglum. "Do you mean you think that everything will come right if we do untie him?" "I don't know about that," said Puddleglum. "Aslan didn't tell Pole what would happen. He only told her what to do. That fellow will be the death of us once he's up, I shouldn't wonder, but that doesn't let us off from following the signs." They all stood looking at one another with bright eyes. It was a sickening moment. "All right," said Jill. "Let's get it over with. Goodbye, everyone." They all shook hands. The knight was screaming by now, and there was foam on his cheeks. "Come on, Scrub," said Puddleglum. He and Scrub drew their swords and went over to the captive. "In the name of Aslan," they said, and they began methodically cutting the ropes. The instant the prisoner was free, he crossed the room in a single bound and seized his own sword, which had been taken from him and laid on the table, and drew it out. "You first," he cried, and fell upon the silver chair. I'm going to show you the cover of the book. I take it off to keep the cover in good shape, but look at that picture. There we have it right there. There is the knight who is going to whack that silver chair with his sword. Sorry about the reflections on it. It's a shiny cover. The silver, this must have been a good sword because the silver gave way before its edge like a string. And in a few minutes, the twisted fragments shining on the floor were all that was left. But as the chair broke, there came from it a bright flash and a sound like thunder, and for a moment a loathsome smell. "Lie there, you vile engine of sorcery," he said, "lest your mistress should ever use you again for another victim." Then he turned and surveyed his rescuers, and the something wrong, whatever it had been, had vanished from his face. "What?" he turned, looking to Puddleglum. "Do I see before me a marshwiggle? A real, live, honest Narnian marshwiggle?" "Oh, so you have heard of Narnia after all?" "Well, had I forgotten it while I was under that spell?" said the knight. "Well, that and all the other bedevilments are now over. You may well believe that I know Narnia, for I am Rilian, Prince of Narnia, and Caspian the Great is my father." "Your Royal Highness," said Puddleglum, sinking down on one knee, and the children did the same, "we have come here for no other reason than to seek you." "And who are you, my other deliverers?" said the prince to Scrub and Jill. "We were sent by Aslan himself from beyond the world's end to seek your highness," said Scrub. "I am Eustace, who sailed with him to the island of Ramadou." "Well, I owe the three of you much greater debt than I can ever pay. But my father, is he still alive?" "He sailed east again before we left Narnia, my lord," said Puddleglum. "But your highness must consider that the king is very old. It's 10 to 1 that the king may die on the voyage." "He's old, you say? How long have I been in the power of the witch?" "It is now more than 10 years since your highness was lost in the woods on the north side of Narnia." 10 years, said the prince, drawing his hand across his face, as if to rub away the past. "Yes, I can believe you, for now that I am myself, I can remember that enchanted life, though while I was enchanted, I couldn't remember my true self. And now, fair friends, but wait, I hear their feet. Doesn't it sicken a man, that padding, woolly tread? Lock the door, boy, or stay, I have a better thought than that. I will fool these earthmen, if Aslan gives me the wit. You take your cue from me." And he walked resolutely to the door and flung it wide open. Whoa. Chapter 12, The Queen of Underland. 2 earthmen entered, but instead of advancing into the room, they placed themselves on either side of the door and bowed deeply. And they were followed immediately by the last person anyone had expected or wished to see, the Lady of the Green Kirtle, the Queen of the Underland. She stood dead still in the doorway, and they could see her eyes moving as she took in the whole situation. The 3 strangers, the silver chair destroyed, and the prince free with his sword in his hand. She turned very white, but Jill thought it was the sort of whiteness that comes over some people's faces, not when they are frightened, but when they are angry. For a moment, the witch fixed her eyes on the prince, and there was murder in them. But then she seemed to change her mind. "Leave us," she said to the 2 earthmen, "and let no one disturb us until I call, on pain of death." The gnomes padded away obediently, and the witch queen shut and locked the door. How now, my lord prince, she said. Has your nightly fit not come upon you, or is it over so soon? Why do you stand there unbound? And who are these aliens? And is it they who have destroyed the chair which was your only safety? Prince Aurelian shivered as she spoke to him, and no wonder. It's not easy to throw off in half an hour an enchantment that made you a slave for 10 years. But then, speaking with great effort, he said, Madam, there will be no more need of that chair. And you, who have told me 100 times how deeply you pitied me for the sorceries by which I was bound, will doubtless hear with joy that they are now ended forever. There was, it seems, some small error in your ladyship's way of treating them. These, my true friends, have delivered me, and I am now in my right mind. And there are 2 things I'd like to say to you. First, as for your ladyship's design of putting me at the head of an army of earthmen so that I may break out into the overworld and there, by force, make myself king over some nation that never did me wrong, murdering their natural lords and holding their throne as a bloody and foreign tyrant, now that I know myself, I do utterly abhor and renounce this plain. And secondly, I am the king's son of Narnia, Rilian, the only child of Caspian the 10th, whom some call Caspian the Seafarer. Therefore, madam, it is my purpose and my duty to depart suddenly from your highness's court back to my own country. May you please grant me and my friends safe conduct and a guide through your dark realm. Now the witch said nothing at all, but moved gently across the room, always keeping her face and eyes steadily toward the prince. And when she had come to a little box set in the wall not far from the fireplace, she opened it and took out a handful of green powder. This she threw on the fire. It didn't blaze very much, but a very sweet and drowsy scent came from it. And all through the conversation which followed, that smell grew stronger and filled the room and made it very hard to think. Secondly, she took out a musical instrument rather like a mandolin, sort of like a small guitar or banjo, a stringed thing that you play. She began to play it with her fingers, a steady, monotonous thrumming that you didn't notice after a few minutes, but the less you noticed it, the more it got into your brain and into your blood. This also made it very hard to think. And after she had thrummed for a time, and the sweet smell was very strong, she began speaking in a sweet, quiet voice. Narnia, she said, Narnia, I have often heard your lordship utter that in your ravings. Dear prince, you are very sick. There is no land called Narnia. Yes, there is, though, ma'am, said Puddleglum. You see, I happen to have lived there all my life. Indeed, said the witch. Tell me, I pray you, where that country is. Up there, said Puddleglum, pointing stoutly overhead. I don't know exactly where, but it's up. How, said the queen with a soft, kind, musical laugh. Is there a country up among the stones and mortar on the roof? No, said Puddleglum, struggling a little to get his breath. It's in the overworld. And what or where, pray tell? How do you call it? Where is this overworld? Oh, don't be so silly, said Scrub, who was fighting hard against the enchantment of the sweet smell and the thrumming. As if you didn't know. It's up above, where you can see the sky and the sun and the stars. You've been there yourself. We saw you there. Oh, I beg your mercy, little brother, laughed the witch, and you couldn't have heard a lovelier laugh. I have no memory of that meeting, but we often meet our friends in strange places when we dream, and unless all dream the same way, you don't ask people to remember them. Madam, said the prince sternly, I have already told your grace that I am the king's son of Narnia. And shall be, dear friend, said the witch in a soothing voice, as if she were humoring a child. You shall be the king of many imagined lands in your fantasies. Well, we've been there too, snapped Jill. She was very angry because she could feel that the enchantment was getting hold of her every moment. But of course, the fact that she could still feel it showed that it hadn't yet fully worked. And you're Queen of Narnia too, I don't doubt, little pretty one, said the witch in the same coaxing and half mocking tone. I am nothing of the sort, said Jill, stamping her feet. We come from another world. Well, this is a prettier game than the other one, said the witch. Tell us, little maid, where is this other world? What ships and chariots go between that world, and ours? Of course, a lot of things darted into Jill's head. Experiment house, Adele Pennefather, her own home, radios, cinemas, cars, airplanes, queues, but they seemed dim and far away. Thrum, thrum, thrum went the strings of the witch's instrument. Jill couldn't remember the names of things in our own world, and this time it didn't come into her head that she was being enchanted, for now the magic was of its full strength. And of course, the more enchanted you get, the more you feel like you're not enchanted at all. And she found herself saying, and at the moment it was a relief to say, no, I suppose that other world must be all a dream. Yes, it is all a dream, said the witch, always thrumming. Yes, all a dream, said Jill. There never was such a world, said the witch. No, said Jill, there never was such a world. There never was any world such as but mine, said the witch. Never any world but yours, said Jill. Puddleglum, though, still fighting hard. I don't know rightly what you all mean by a world, he said, talking like a man who didn't have quite enough air, but you can play that fiddle until your fingers drop off, and you won't make me forget Narnia. And the whole overworld, too. We'll never see it again, I shouldn't wonder. You may have blotted it out and turned it dark like this, for all I know. But I know that I was there once. I've seen the sky full of stars. I've seen the sun coming out of the sea in the morning and sinking behind the mountains at night. And I've seen the sun up in the midday sky when I couldn't look at it for brightness. Puddleglum's words had a rousing effect, and the other three all breathed again and looked at one another like people newly awakened. Why, yes, there is, cries the prince, of course. The blessings of Aslan upon this honest Marshwiggle. Have we all been dreaming these last few minutes? How could we have forgotten it? Of course we've all seen the sun. Well, yes, we have, said Scrub. Good for you, Puddleglum. You're the only one of us with any sense, I do believe. Then came the witch's voice, cooing softly like the voice of a pigeon from the high trees in an old garden at 3 o'clock in the middle of a sleepy summer afternoon. And her voice said, What is this sun that you all speak of? Do you mean anything by the word? Yes, we jolly well do, said Scrub. Can you tell me what it's like? Said the witch. Thrum, thrum, thrum with the strings. Did I show you a picture of her with her mandolin? Sorry about that. I keep reading on ahead and forgetting. There she is, strumming her mandolin. Oh, yes, I have turned the page, haven't I? Can you tell me what it's like? Asked the witch. Thrum, thrum, thrum went the strings. Please, your grace, said the prince very coldly and politely. You see that lamp? It's round and yellow and gives light to the whole room, and it hangs from the roof. Now, that thing that we call the sun is like the lamp, only far greater and brighter, and it gives light to the whole overworld, and it hangs in the sky. Hangs from what, my lord? Asked the witch. And then, while they were all still thinking about how to answer her, she added with another of her soft silver laughs, You see, when you try to think clearly what this sun may be, you can't tell me. You can only tell me it's like the lamp. Your son is a dream, and there's nothing in that dream that wasn't copied from this lamp. The lamp is the real thing. The sun is just a fairy tale, a children's story." "Yes, I see now," said Jill in a heavy, hopeless tone. "It must be so." And while she said this, it seemed to her to make very good sense. Slowly and gravely the witch repeated, "There is no sun." And they all said nothing. And she repeated in a deeper and softer voice, "There is no sun." After a pause, and after a struggle in their minds, all four of them said together, "You are right, there is no sun." And it was such a relief to give in and say it. "There never was such a sun," said the witch. "No, there never was a sun," said the prince and the Marshwiggle and the children. For the last few minutes, Jill had been feeling that there was something that she must remember at all costs. And now she did, but it was dreadfully hard to say it. She felt as if huge weights were laid on her lips. But at last, with an effort that seemed to take everything out of her, she said, "There's Aslan." "Aslan," said the witch, quickening ever so slightly the pace of her thrumming. "What a pretty name. What does it mean?" "He's the great lion who called us out of our own world," said Scrub, "and sent us into this one to find Prince Aurelian." "What is a lion?" said the witch. "Oh, hang it all," said Scrub. "Don't you know? How can we describe it to her? Have you ever seen a cat?" "Surely," said the queen. "I love cats." "Well, a lion is a little bit, but only a little bit, like a huge cat. At least, it's got a mane, but not like a horse's mane. It's more like a judge's wig, and it's yellow and terrifically strong." The witch shook her head. "I see," she said, "that we can do no better with your lion, as you call it, than we did with your son. You have seen lamps, and so you imagined a bigger and better lamp and called it the sun. You've seen cats, and now you want a bigger and better cat, and it's to be called a lion. Well, it's a pretty game of make-believe, though, to tell the truth, but it would suit you all better if you were younger. And now you can put nothing into your make-believe without copying it from the real world, this world of mine, which is the only world. But even you children are too old to be playing games like this. And as for you, my Lord Prince, you are a fine, full-grown man. Shame on you. Are you not ashamed to be playing with toys? Come on now, put away all your childish tricks. I have work for you to do in the real world. There is no Narnia, there is no overworld, no sky, no sun, no Aslan. You must all now go to bed, and we'll begin a wiser life tomorrow. But first, let's go to bed, to sleep. Soft, deep pillows, sleep without foolish dreams. The prince and the children were standing with their heads hung down, their cheeks flushed, their eyes half closed, their strength all gone from them, the enchantment almost complete. But Puddleglum, desperately gathering all his strength, walked over to the fire, and then he did a very brave thing. He knew that it wouldn't hurt him quite as much as if he were a human, for his feet, which were bare, were webbed and hard and cold-blooded like a duck's. But he knew it would hurt him badly enough, and so it did. With his bare foot, he stamped on the fire, grinding out a large part of it into ashes on the hearth. And three things happened all at once. First, the heavy, sweet smell grew very much less, for though the whole fire had not been put out, a good bit of it had, and what remained smelled very largely of burnt marshwiggle, which is not at all an enchanting smell. That instantly made everyone's brains a lot clearer. The prince and the children held their heads up again and opened their eyes. Secondly, the witch, in a loud and terrible voice, utterly different from the sweet tones she had been using, called out, "What are you doing? You dare to touch my fire again, mud filth, and I'll turn the blood to fire in your veins." Thirdly, the pain itself made Puddleglum's head for a moment perfectly clear, and he knew exactly what he really thought. There's nothing like a good shock of pain for dissolving certain kinds of magic. "One word, madam," he said, coming back from the fire, limping because of the pain. "One word. All you've been saying is quite right, I shouldn't wonder. I'm a chap who always likes to know the worst and then put the best face on it. So I won't deny anything of what you said, but there's one thing more to be said. Even so, supposing we have only dreamed or made up all those things, trees and grass and sun and moon and stars and Aslan himself. Suppose we have. Then all I can say is, in that case, the made-up things seem a good deal more important than the real ones. Suppose this black pit of a kingdom of yours is the only world. Well, it strikes me as a pretty poor one. And that's a funny thing when you come to think of it. We're just babies making up a game, if you're right, but 4 babies making up a game can make a play world which licks your real world hollow. That's why I'm going to stand by our play world. I'm on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan. And I'm going to live as much like a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't a Narnia. So thank you kindly for supper. If these 2 gentlemen and the young lady are ready, we are leaving your court at once, and we're going to spend the rest of our lives looking for the overland. Not that our lives will be very long, I shouldn't think, but that's a small loss to this world, as if this world is as dull a place as you say." "Good old Puddleglum!" cried Scrub and Jill. But the prince shouted suddenly, "Beware! Look out for the witch!" And what they did made their hair nearly stand on end. The instrument dropped from her hands, and her arms appeared to be fastened to her sides. Her legs were intertwined with each other, and her feet had disappeared. The long green train of her skirt thickened and grew solid, and seemed to be all one piece with the writhing green pillar of her interlocked legs. And that writhing green pillar was curving and swaying as if it had no joints, or else it was all joints. Her head was thrown far back, and while her nose grew longer and longer, every other part of her face seemed to disappear except for her eyes. Huge, flaming eyes they were now, without brows or lashes. All this takes time to write down, but it happened so quickly that it was hardly enough time to see it. Long before there was time to do anything, the change was complete, and the great serpent, which the witch had become, green as poison, thick as Jill's waist, had flung 2 or 3 coils of its loathsome body around the prince's legs. Quick as lightning, another great loop darted around, intending to pin his sword arm to his side. But the prince was just in time. He raised his arms and got them clear. The living knot tightened around his chest, ready to crack his ribs like firewood when it grew tight. But the prince caught hold of the creature's neck in its left hand, trying to squeeze it until it choked. This held its face, if you could call it a face, about 5 inches away from its own. The forked tongue flickered horribly in and out, but could not reach him. With his right hand, he drew back his sword for the strongest blow he could give. And meanwhile, Scrub and Puddleglum had drawn their weapons and rushed to his aid. There's Prince Rilian with the snake wound round him, and he's holding the snake's head away from him, and he's got his sword in his other hand. And you can see that Scrub is running up to him there. What a wicked, evil-looking snake she is, isn't she? All 3 blows fell at once. Scrub's, which didn't even pierce the scales and did no good, on the body of the snake below the prince's hand, but the prince's own blow and Puddleglum's both struck it on the neck. Even that did not quite kill it, although it did begin to loosen its its grip on Rillian's legs and chest, but with repeated blows they hacked off its head. The horrible thing went on coiling and moving like a piece of wire long after it had died, and the floor, as you can imagine, was a nasty mess. The prince, when he got his breath back, said, "Gentlemen, I thank you." Then the three conquerors stood staring at one another and panting, without another word for a long time. Jill had very wisely sat down and was keeping quiet. She was saying to herself, "I hope I don't faint or start crying or do anything idiotic." "My royal mother is avenged," said Rillian presently. "This is undoubtedly the same snake that I chased in vain by the fountain in the forests of Narnia so many years ago. All these years I have been a slave of my mother's slayer. Yet I am glad, gentlemen, that the foul witch took to her serpent form at the last. It would not have suited me well with my heart or my honor to have killed a woman. But look to Jill," he said, and she said, "I'm all right, thanks." "Damsel," said the prince, bowing to her, "you have great courage, and therefore I doubt not you come of noble blood in your own world. But come, friends, there is a little wine left. Let us refresh ourselves and have a drink to each other, and after that we must make plans." "That's a jolly good idea, sir," said Scrub. And that's the end of chapter 12. Now we're going to read chapter 13 next time, called Underland Without the Queen. So, even though they blew the first signs, they did the right thing by the last one, and they have freed Prince Rillian, and he has destroyed the silver chair. But they are not safe yet, are they? They're still stuck down there. We'll see how Aslan has all this worked out, using these human people to do his will. And they're blundering and stumbling like we do when we're trying to do what God tells us to do. But he makes it come right in the end. So next time when we're together, we'll read about what's going on. Bye for now. I'm so glad to have been with you. Bye.